Okay, hi everyone. This video we're going to look at setting up your timer for your level. It's part of your assessment criteria that you have a timer system within your game that allows some element of challenge. Um, Before we begin, we just need to have a think about how time actually works within Unreal Engine. We could set up a time system within this level. Um, we're not going to do that. We're going to set it up on the game mode. Um, the reason being is with how Unreal Engine handles time, um, the, um, the stored data for this level um, will be held in memory whilst we're in this level. Now, another part of your assess criteria is to create a second level that the players can traverse to. Now, should the player load that level, um, your event tick will essentially restart the count process. Um, now, helpfully, Unreal Engine provides a specific type of blueprint that allows for persistence across separate levels. This is stored within a very specific type of blueprint called a GameInstance. Now, the GameInstance can hold data that will persist between different levels. So if you have this level, for instance, and we have a door set up that loads up another level, so perhaps the inside of a room, the inside of another building, we're essentially loading different levels. Now, our timer system would reset, but because the game instance is going to be where we store our time, um, that will be persistent across levels and will kind of keep a track of what the current time is, irrespective of which level we're in. So to start, what we're going to do is just right click. I'm going to create this in the root content folder just so it's easy to get to. So we're going to create a blueprint class, and instead of using one of the common classes, we actually have to search for the specific class we want. So the one that we want is going to be a game instance. So I'm just going to select that one there. I'm just going to call this one new game instance. Now, this is not something that we have to place in the level. It will just kind of be in the game itself. We're going to just open up this game instance, and what you'll notice firstly is that there are no kind of preset nodes. Now, the game instance doesn't actually include a tick function. It can't kind of work out time itself, but it is used to store things irrespective of time. So I'll kind of look at the game instance as kind of existing outside the bounds of time. They kind of store data that can be kind of ticked to and then kind of picked back up again within another level. So that might not make sense now, but once we start putting this together, I'm sure you'll kind of understand how this works. So within this blueprint, our game instance, we just need to create our variables, which we're going to store our seconds and minutes. So I'm just going to create two variables called int seconds and int minutes. I'm just going to set these to be integers and just make these editable as well. Now, these values here, we're not actually going to create any code inside the game instance. This is purely just to store these two values, and we'll write to these from the game mode and pick these up in the game instance, and they will be fed from the game instance into our HUD. So we don't need to actually load anything in here. The only thing we need to do is obviously just set our default times. Now for the int seconds, we're going to set that to 59. So basically an entire minute. We'll count down from 59 down to 0, and then obviously reset to 59 after that. Your integer minutes, this is obviously up to you how long you want your games to last. I'm just going to set mine to 2 for now, so we're going to end up with the 59 seconds on top, essentially a 3-minute long game. So once it's done, we can just compile and we can close that. Now, in terms of setting up our actual timer, I'm just going to go and do this in the game mode. So this is accessible from your blueprints on the top here. In fact, actually, before we do that, just so I don't forget, we actually do need to tell Unreal Engine that we are going to be using this specific GameInstance blueprint. So we just need to head into Settings and Project Settings, and in Maps and Modes, you can see here you can set your GameInstance type. So I'm just going to set mine to New GameInstance and just close that off. So now we're going to be pointing towards this GameInstance. So we're going to go back to Blueprints and just open and edit the first person game mode. And this is where all of our time function is going to be addressed. So from the event tick is going to drive the decrease in our seconds and minutes. So from the event tick, we're just going to click and drag out of the execution, and we're just going to run a delay node. Now the delay node, you can specify a period of time that will elapse before the next function kind of kicks in. Now obviously, because we want to decrease our timer by a second, it makes sense to set the duration to be a second also. So event tick gets called every frame, but the delay kind of kicks in every second. So because we want to we want to kind of set the integer seconds with our game instance, we need to cast to the game instance. So previous iterations, I've set up my seconds and minutes within the game mode. I'm just going to delete these. I don't want to get confused and kind of try and call these ones. I want to make sure I'm always calling the instances, the integer variables from the game instance. So from delay, we're just going to cast to game instance, and I want to obviously cast to my specific game instance, the new game instance. We're going to check for a game instance object, so just type in game instance. There we go. And now from our game instance, we can now, we're going to set our integer seconds. So just type in int, and we want to set int seconds. Now what we want to do here is to set our integer seconds, we want to basically get our current integer seconds and we want to reduce our integer seconds by 1. So the event kick kicks in, the delay every 1 second, we're going to reduce the integer seconds, the current integer seconds, by 1 second, by 1 amount. Now what I'm going to actually do here is with my game instance that I've cast to, I'm actually going to promote this to a variable, because we're going to be calling this function, this variable, sorry, we're going to be calling this variable quite a lot. So just for purpose of neatness, I'm just going to rename this new game inst, and just make sure we plug in that execution pin. We can just break the links here just to keep everything nice and tidy. So that goes into there and that goes into there. Now because we've set this here, we can call this later on when we need it. So reduce the integer seconds by 1 for every second that elapses. We then want to check to see how many seconds are left within our count. So we're going to run a branch. Now what the branch is going to check is our current integer count below 0, because we're counting down from 59 down to 0. If it's lower than 0, if it goes down to -1, we want to reduce our minutes count by 1 and then reset our second timer back up to 59. So from the branch, we're just going to run a integer less than. We want to check from our new GameInst. Going to get, we want to check the get in seconds. Is the integer seconds less than 0? If that's true, we're going to set from our game instance, just going to create a copy of that, Control W. We're going to get our int minutes and we're going to set our int minutes. So we're going to get our int minutes, we're going to minus integer, so -1 from our current integer minutes count, and we're going to set int minutes. So this is if this condition here is true. And we're just going to plug that into there. So if the integer seconds gets to below 0, we're going to -1 from the current integer minutes count. So I've set mine to 2. So when we get down to 2 minutes and 0 seconds, if that goes 1 second lower, we then -1, so we now display 1 minute rather than 2. And we do just need to set our integer seconds, not minutes, we're going to reset our integer second timer back to 59, so the process will continue again. So that should be pretty much it for the timer so far. So let's just compile that and let's look at how we can get this set up to display on screen. So I'm just going to go to my widget folder and I'm just going to jump into my HUD widget. And if you've had a look at my video on setting up keys, you'll probably recognize these from the previous video. We're just going to set up something similar to this. So we're going to start with some text. So I'm just going to drag this in from the left hand side into the designer area, and these text boxes here are going to represent our time. So this text box, I'm going to make the number value, the number size a little bit bigger. So there we go, and we want to make sure it's kind of centered as well. So just to keep things nice and tidy, let's just rename these text boxes as well. So this is going to be minutes, and we can just copy and paste that. So this is going to be our minutes number. So this will probably require some trial and error just to make sure that you get everything nicely lined up. This is going to be our, sorry, that should be seconds. This one's going to be minutes. Don't worry too much about the content. We probably want to make this one justified to the right so that it's the numbers are situated on the right hand side. This one we'll leave as the left. We do just need to create one more copy of this, and this is going to be the only piece of text where we specify exactly what it is. So let's just set that to colon. There we go, and we've just set that to be centered, and we just want to pop that in between, so about there. There we go. So don't worry about these. The text is going to be updated based on the input from the timer countdown. So just going to select these seconds, and in our content here, we're just going to apply a new binding. Now you can see that I've already got a couple that I've already made. What I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to jump onto the graph, and oh, they're already gone from there. So probably just need to, compile first. And it should be gone now. There we go. Right, so we're just going to create a binding. So this binding is going to be for our to get our seconds. So let's just rename this to get seconds, our get seconds function. Now what we want to do from our get seconds is we're going to cast to our new instance, our new game instance. This is where our values for our seconds and minutes is being stored. So we want to cast this to game, where we want to check game instance. There we go. And as the new game instance, we want to get our second value. And we're going to convert this into the into text to output. So we're just going to click and drag from our integer to our return node. And the one thing that we want to do is this conversion node here. We're just going to open it up with a little arrow here, and we're going to look at this number here. Now what will happen with this number is, what it does is when we get our countdown down to 10 seconds, if we minus 1 second off of that, we're left with 9 seconds. Now this at present is just reading a numerical value from here. It doesn't understand that it is a time value. So naturally what's going to happen is when it displays, it's going to display as just a single digit number, which will look a little bit odd without that leading 0 in front of it. So this minimum integral digits basically just specifies what how many digits this conversion is going to display as. So for our purposes, we want this to display as 2. So when it gets down to 10 seconds, when we get to 9 seconds, we'll have a 0, 9 rather than just a 9. So once that's done, we can compile that. Let's have a look. Execution path doesn't return, cast failed. This sometimes can happen. Let's just if we just create a new return node, add return node, and a new input. We want to make this text, and just compile that. New parameter. Sorry, let's just undo that before we get rid of that return node. We were getting a cast failed. The execution path doesn't end with a return node, although it is actually there. Let's just break the link to that. Let's just tap that into there. Let's just compile again. Okay, what we'll do is we'll keep an eye on this just to double check, to make sure. I mean, we're getting the compile is returning okay. We're just getting oh, sorry, that's my bad. Cast failed, it's referring to this pin here. Yeah, this is all good, so don't worry about that. Okay, let's just jump back to the designer, and we'll do the same process with binding the text for this. So create a binding, and we want to do exactly the same. So we're going to obviously rename this as well. So this is going to be get minutes. We want to cast to new GameInstance as a GameInstance, and from the GameInstance, similar to before, we want to get minutes. Let's get in minutes, and exactly the same as before. Plug this into the return value, and let's just set that to 2. So compile that, and that's pretty much it to get it drawn on screen. So let's do a check. If we jump into let's have a look at our first person character just to make sure that this is going to be drawn to the screen. So generally you'll want to put your viewport, your HUD, either as a HUD blueprint, or you can attach it to your character itself. Now I have attached mine to the character already, but just to kind of reiterate how this is done. From event begin play, we're going to create a widget. We just need to specify which class it's going to be. So I've constructed mine in my HUD, that's the name of my widget here. The owning player, we're just going to get a reference to the player controller. There we go. So once we've created the widget, we actually need to draw it to the screen. So from the return value, we're just going to say add to viewport. So without this node here, the widget will be created in memory but not actually added to the viewport. So it's very important that you set those nodes up there. So let's just compile that. Let's have a little test and see what happens. So if we play, there we go. So we've got our timer working on screen. You can see it's a little bit off center. One thing that we can do to rectify this, in your back in your HUD widget, in the design graph, if you just select each of these text boxes in turn, you'll see you get kind of a little sun icon here in the left hand side. This is denoting your anchor. Now anchors are important to ensure that your information is positioned correctly on screen. At the minute we're assuming that we're using a 16:9 display. If we want this view to scale or be presented on different aspect ratios, we want to make sure that this stays in the center relative to the size of the viewport. So select each of these text boxes, and we're just going to set the anchor to be middle top. And we're going to do this for all of these. There we go. So let's just compile that, and let's just quickly play that again. And there we go. You can see that it's now more centered to my viewport. Excellent. Okay, so we've got the HUD working. We've got it counting down. The next thing to do is look at how we can set up some extra functionality. So what's going to happen when the viewport when the time runs out. So I've already created a couple of examples here. Just have a look at one of these. So this is basically a game over screen that we can create as a separate widget. And we can specify that when the game is over, we load this widget up. So we've got a couple of buttons, and we've got some text. And what we're going to do is I'm going to go through creating this from scratch. So I'm just going to close this one off here, and I'm just going to delete both of these game over widgets here. So we're going to start by creating a new user interface, a new widget blueprint. I'm just going to call this one game over. Now what we want to do is create a full screen kind of block color. Now we're going to use an image for this, and you probably think that with an image you would obviously be expecting some kind of bitmap file. You can use the image object to kind of create block colors and load images, pretty much anything really. So if you have an image that you've created maybe in Photoshop or Paint that you want to use, you can specify that within the brush. Obviously you would load in the image that you want to use to your content before you can specify it here. For now we're just going to use just specify a color. So I'm just going to specify this to be fully black. There we go. And we want this to fill the entire screen, so I'm just going to, on my size X and Y, just make it full HD dimensions, so 1920 by 1080, and just set my position X and Y to be set to 0. And whilst we're at it, we might as well set the anchor point as well to be centered. So this will remain centered irrespective of screen size or ratio. So again, to keep things nice and tidy, I'm just going to rename things as I go. So black screen. We're going to add some text onto the screen as well. Let's just make this a little bit bigger. So let's say 75. We'll just make the actual text block bigger as well. Let's centrally justify it as well. There we go. And let's actually just type in some text. So game over. Let's just make that a bit bigger. There we go. So again, let's make this centered to the screen. So let's just maybe move that over slightly. There we go. And we can give this a bit of a color as well, just for a sense of urgency and importance. So I'm going to make that red. The next thing to do is just add our buttons. So the buttons you can just add from the left hand side as well. Just going to click and drag one in. I think this time I'll make this a little bit longer and a little bit bigger as well. There we go. Let's just try and get that centered out there. So I'm going to just rename these as I go. So this is going to be my restart button, and I'm just going to set just copy paste this. So copy, right click on my canvas panel, paste. I'll create it up here. So I'm just going to align this up. Obviously these buttons don't have any text on at the minute. It's going to be important obviously so the player knows what's what. So we're going to add some text, and you'll see that as you hover over, the text snaps into the middle of the box. What this is doing, it's adding that text as a child to that button. So if we move the button around, the text will follow. So this one is going to be our restart level. There we go. So restart level. This one is going to be set to exit game. There we go. So exit game, let's just make that a little bit more red, and restart level, let's make that nice and green. There we go. Okay, so we've got the visual set up. Now let's just add some functionality. So I'm going to select the restart button first, and on the right hand side we're just going to add an on-clicked event. So this is going to open up the event graph and basically just ask us what do we want to do when we click this button here. So when we restart the level, we'll want to reset our time as well. So we'll want to unclicked. What we'll do is we will cast to new game instance. Remember just to check for a game instance. And what we want to do is, as a new game instance, we'll want to set integer minutes, and you want to set this back to your default time, so set to 2, and we'll also want to set our integer seconds, so we'll set this back to 59 as well. So we're basically resetting the time. There we go. So what we also want to do is obviously restart the level. Now there's a couple of ways we can do this. We could just click and drag from the set and just specify an open level. If we do this, we need to make sure when we type in the name that we use the exact name of the map. Now, a little way to get around this is we can actually call a get current level name node, which will look to what that name actually is, and we can actually just link that straight in there. So there's not going to be any kind of issues or human errors with not typing in the name correctly. So when we click that restart button, we'll reset our time back to the defaults, and we will basically get the name of this level and restart it. So that's pretty much it for the restart. Let's just jump back to the exit game, which is going to be a little bit more simple. So on clicked, all we want to do is quit game. There we go. So do just need to rename that button just to keep everything nice and tidy. So our button here, let's just make sure that it is renamed. So this is going to be our exit game. There we go. Excellent. So let's just compile that. Everything looks pretty good. So getting our game mode, our game over HUD to appear on screen, we need to jump back into our game mode blueprint. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to check whether our integer seconds and minutes are both equal to 0, because obviously that would specify, that would signify that the time was over. So we're just going to grab firstly another instance, another get of our new game instance variable, and we want to get in seconds, and we also want to get int minutes, because these are the values that we want to check. So we want to check these from our branch here, from the false branch. We're going to run another branch, and we'll also hook up from where we've set the seconds back up here. So irrespective of where we are, we're checking to see whether these are equal to 0. So is int seconds equal to 0? If that's true, are the minutes equal to 0 also? So if both of these conditions are true, then the game is over. So what we'll want to do is we're going to, from this true node, we're going to disable the player's input so that they can't move or do anything anymore, and then obviously we'll get the game over HUD to kind of pop up on screen. So from our true node, we are going to perform a cast. We're going to cast to the first person character. Now, I'm obviously doing this in the first person template, so if you're working with a third person character or your own character, you want to load up your own kind of character object here. So we want to get player character. There we go. And what we want to do here is we want to disable input, and that's going to basically stop us dead. We will not be able to move at all. Now once we've disabled input, we want to create the new widget that we've created before. We want to create that game over widget. Before we add it to the screen, however, we want to make sure that it is actually transparent, because we want to kind of have a nice fade-in effect. So from the return value here, I'm just going to set the color and opacity. And this is obviously using this widget as a target. So we want to say, when we create the widget, before we draw it to the screen, we want to make sure that it is actually completely transparent. So we're just setting this alpha value here to 0. We can then, from that create widget node, we can add to the viewport. So at this stage, the widget will actually be on the screen, but we won't be able to see it because it will be fully transparent. Now from the once we've added it to the viewport, we'll then want the widget to kind of fade in. So we're going to use a trusty timeline node to actually kind of get this to work. So this is going to be our opacity. There we go, and we'll just double click in to open up our timeline. Now we should be fairly familiar with these now. We've used them a few times. We're going to start by just adding in a flow track, and I'm going to set the name of this just to be opacity. And in terms of the length, we're going to put it to 3.5 seconds. So at 0 time, our value is going to be 0, but at 3.5 seconds in, we're going to set our value to 1. So this graph is going to basically dictate the transition between being fully transparent to being fully opaque. So we can compile that. Let's just close that off, and we've now got our event graph working. So we're just going to plug in the add to viewport into the plane, and from the update we're just going to grab a copy of this set color, Control W. We're going to update this, but the opacity is going to drive this color and opacity here. So we're just converting this float value into a linear color, so a 0 to 1 opacity into a 0 to 1 linear color structure. So let's just give this a try, see how this works. I'm just going to set in my game instance, I'm going to set my default values for seconds just to be a quite small value, just so that we can actually check this without having to hang around for too long. So it's about 7 seconds. Let's just compile that and give it a test. Okay, so a couple of errors in the first person game mode. Let's have a look and see what that is. So first person character, where are we getting the errors? That's all good. First person game mode. Oh, sorry, game mode, not. Here we go. So, here we go. So we're getting an error here. This is because I have not set a target. The target is a user widget, so we just need to plug in from the creating the user widget directly into there. Let's just compile, and that all looks good. So let's just test that now. There we go. So we've got seconds. So when we get to 0, we should lose control, and our game widget will fade in. Now, looks like I haven't set my anchors for my buttons, so I just need to go back and do that quickly. To game over. Yes, there we go. So we just need to set the anchor, and we'll just set these more to the middle. So there we go. Compile, but that works nicely. So we've got our game over working pretty well. 3, 2, 1, game over. There we go. So let's just test the functionality of our buttons. Actually, that's one thing we've got to do. So we've got to the game over screen, but by default the mouse cursor is hidden from the game. Now this is contained within the player controller. It's easy enough to access and to kind of implement in. Obviously, when we finish our game, when it's game over, we'll want to have our cursor be activated on screen so we can select the buttons. So let's just exit out of that, and what we're going to do is inside the game mode, we're just going to add just after we've disabled input here. So we're just going to move these widgets out of the way. We basically want to call our player controller. So get player controller. There we go. And from the player controller, we just want to set our show mouse cursor. There we go. So by default, it is off. We want to make sure that it's turned on. Plug this all in. Let's just test that again. So back into our game. So we have 7 seconds to start, run around. When we get to 0, boom, there we go, and we have our cursor. So we've now got our restart level, exit game. If we click restart level, there we go, it restarts level, and you can see that it has actually reset the time back to our full amount. So we did manually set it to 7 seconds, but because we set this, we set in our reset code that we wanted it to reset to the full amount of time. That's what it has done there. Okay, so let's just exit that. Let's just play again. And if we just let this go to 0, let's just try our exit game. And there we go. You see that it exits back to the editor, which is absolutely spot on. So everything is working fine. So the next thing to have a look at, just to kind of cover your assessment criteria, is to have a look at how we can load up different levels. Now, there's a couple of things we're going to have to do here. We're going to have to amend our door blueprint that we've created earlier, and we obviously have to create a second level that we can actually load. So what we're going to do is we are going to obviously create a new level. Now you can create one from scratch if you right click and just create level, but this will create a completely empty level. So instead of doing that, what we'll do is if we just click and drag the first person example map onto our folder and just tell it to copy, it will create a copy for us. Might take a couple of seconds, obviously just copying quite a lot of data over, but we want to just make sure that we rename this to something to differentiate it from the existing level. So first person example map and then new level. There we go. So again, might take some time just as it's kind of converting everything over. Excellent. So we've got a new level. So we're not going to jump into there yet. Now, as usual, I've kind of created some examples of ones I've done earlier. If we have a look at the doors that we created in the last session, we can just do a little bit of an amendment. So I'm just going to delete that one I've already done. Delete, so there we go. And what we're going to do is we're just going to create a copy of the existing door that we've got. So I'm going to duplicate this, and let's just call this door level switch, because this one's going to be a little bit different. So inside the door blueprint, in the viewport, let's just have a look at how we can make this a little bit different looking. So if we just maybe add, let's just add a couple of components. Let's just add a cylinder. So this cylinder is just going to be a little visual way to represent that this is a slightly different door. There we go. So let's just set this to 0.05, 0.4, 0.4. There we go. Maybe just reposition it slightly as well. So let's just move it so it's out the front of the door. There we go. And maybe just give it a material as well. So red instance. There we go. So we've got a nice, kind of differentiated door. So if we jump into the event graph now, all we need to do really at the end here is we've still got our animation for the door. But we're just going to use that node that we set up with the restart level button. We're just going to tell it to open level. Now again, this is very important that you have the exact name here. So I called my new duplicate level new level, so I just want to make sure that this is set to new level. And let's just compile that and make sure within the new level, we just double click to open it. I'm just going to save all the content from the first person example map. Might take some time. Here we go. So we're inside the new level map. So what we want to do here is we want to add a player start. Now we want to set this up to be in the area, the door that we kind of come out of. So we're just going to set this up over here, and just want to set this up so we're facing outwards as well. So this will be, I mean, for the purpose of this, it's going to show you how this works. Logically, it doesn't really kind of work because we're kind of coming out of the door the same way we went in. But for the purpose of this, it should be fine. So I'm just going to get rid of the other player first person carried out of here because we don't need it. We've got the player start here. So there we go, that should be pretty good. So if we jump back into the first person example map, just save that off, shouldn't take too long to save. We can now drag in our door. So our locked door here, let's have a look. Our meshes, so we've got our door switch. Drag that in, that's obviously quite small. So this is now set up to go to the other level. In fact, what we'll do is let's create a system that we have a nice drop down list. So we're going to basically replicate the function of the drop down system we had for the colors for the door. We're just going to start by creating a new enumerator. So that's going to be within our blueprints and enumeration. We're just going to call this level select. So this will basically just save us a little bit of time. We'll be able to kind of select which level we want the door to actually take us to. So inside this enumerator, we're just going to add 2 new fields, and we need to be very careful that we actually type in the exact name from the color for the name of the map. So first person example map, and we'll call this one new level. There we go. So save that off, close off that enumerator, and now back in the door. So we go back into the level door switch. We want to create a new variable. So we're going to create a new variable called level select. And we want to make sure that this is set to be of the type level select as an enumerator, and we want to make sure that this is public as well, so that we actually can change those values. So we've now got a drop down list which will appear on instances of the door. Before we close that off, obviously though, we want to make sure that we our open level is determined by our new enumerator. So we should be able to get this and convert enum to name. So level select converts into the level name there. If we compile that now, back in the scene, our door switch, if we just make sure we're looking at the details, we should now have a level select, so we can actually select which level we want our door to take us back to. So the level select for for this one, we're in the key first person example map, so we might as well set this to the new level. And if we have a look, we should be able to, if we go back to the other level, the new level, let's just save that, we should be able to add a door which will bring us back to here as well. Now, just because obviously everything in here looks exactly the same as the other level, I'm just going to delete some stuff out just to differentiate things a little bit. Let's have a look. So we could, let's just delete all of these cubes out of here. So edit a cube. There we go. So a nice kind of empty level just to kind of differentiate. Now what we'll want to do is in the new level we'll obviously want to have a door which will take us back. So we can drop it back in here. And we'll set this one to be a green door. So we need a green key to get through this door. So that should all work fine now. Let's just do a quick test of this and see what happens. So we're going to press play. Oh, got an error already. Let's have a look. Travel failure. Shutting down. Right. Play and edit start time. New level. Okay, that's interesting. Let's just make sure in our game instance we've got enough time. Oh, not that one. For our game instance, let's just make sure we have a lot of time here. So let's just say 59, and for integer minutes, let's just say 2 again. Okay, so let's just play this again. Oh, we're still getting an error message. Let's see if we can have a look. Play and edit a start time for game maps, new level 0.5, travel failure, client travel failure. Okay, this might be to do with our player start. Let's see, let's just delete that out of there. Let's just try playing this now. Okay, so we're inside the new level. Okay, I think I know what we've got. So we have a player start here. Network player start. Let's just jump back into our first person example map. And let's just give this a try. Okay, so if we play the game, okay, so we've got our timer. Let's grab a key. So we've got the key that is required for this door. Okay, and we're getting an error message, so travel failure. First person example map. Okay, client travel failure, invalid URL. First person example map. This might have something to do with our enumerator. So let's have a look back on that. So in the doors, our level select, first person example map, that matches up, new level matches up as well. Let's see. So we're in the first person example map, we're going to load up new level. Let's just double check if it's the enumerator to see if that's the case. So if we let's just delete that out of there and let's just set that to new level and see if that's what is causing the problem. Thought we could be clever by using an enumerator, but oh, there we go. Okay, so we did teleport, but we seem to have kind of just dropped through the level, so it might be that we need to back in the other level, maybe just create some kind of player start that we can actually generate from. Okay, so we've got nowhere to start in here, so let's just create a player start. Set this to here. Okay, and then just make sure we're playing from the first person example map. Okay, so we're back in the first person example map. We've got our key to load. So let's try getting through the door. And there we go. We're now inside the second level. So that's a nice way to transfer between levels. You can see that our time has persisted between levels due to the fact that we've used a game instance. So there was no reset of time. Let's just see, did we set this up to go back to where we wanted? Nope, we're looped inside here. Okay, so that's a simple fix of just making sure in the new level that we set this to go back. Oh, it's already set to first person example map. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, okay, we're not actually we're not using the enumerator anymore, are we? So we actually need to state. Let's have a look. Ah, yes, we'll need to create. In fact, actually, that might be our problem here. Materials, mesh. Let's just see if we can create a variable of level type. We just call this level name. And let's just see if we can create this as a name. Yes, that's what we want. But we want to create this as an array. Get that. No, not as an array, sorry. Not as an array, change variable type, there we go. Okay, we may be able to set level select get. No, okay. There will be a way to work around this to create kind of a drop down for levels. I think what we'll do is we'll leave it for now because we do have the functionality there. We would obviously just need to create a new instance of the door that we could specify to come back to the first person level. But in terms of what we need to do to pass the unit, we've covered creating time, we've covered using a game instance to store our seconds and minutes values in a way that is persistent and that stays across loading multiple levels. We've had a look at using widgets to draw to the screen in terms of using a heads-up display and using widgets for things like game over screens to